Jeff Paterson joins us, our Canucks reporter, one half of the Rink Wide duo with Andrew Wadden. In fact, more on Rink Wide here in a moment. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
I neglected to wave the red beet in front of his face yesterday, Blake, that the BC Lions are on another bye. It's their third bye prior to Labor Day.
They basically play every other week, right?
The pat down of a few weeks ago of Jeff on the schedule, but this is the annual bye, so you're
right. No, this one we knew it was coming. 2 in the first 4 weeks seemed excessive in a 9-team league, but no, this one you could see coming from a mile away. And then I guess the good news is that they play a healthy dose of games after Labor Day and can get into some sort of rhythm and routine, hopefully, that will see them ride this nice start to the season all the way to the playoffs.
You don't happen to play quarterback, do you, Jeff?
I don't. Some tendonitis in the old shoulder there. No.
That's it. The BC Lions regularly return. Each and every week they'll have a game after this Labor Day weekend. Patrick Johnson, who we spoke to earlier, with a story on Vasily Podkolzin. They're out skating at Scotia Bar in these informal skates prior to training camp and preseason. His English is improved. He is as happy as ever, Jeff. We were talking while you were away on vacation what a good season for Vasily would look like. And, Blake, I think we arrived at, what we thought an extraordinary season would be for him in his rookie year, and that is if he can be a half-point-per-game guy, right? Turn it up to 40 points from the 26 or whatever he had last year. But you tell me, Jeff, what's your forecast for the second year?
I kind of get a feeling in this market that there is a ridiculously low bar. And the market's been guilty of that in a lot of ways with the team as a whole, but some individuals as well. I think we have to remember, this guy was a top 10 pick. He was the 10th overall pick in his draft here in Vancouver in 2019. You get taken in the top 10 for a reason, because you're a pretty damn good prospect at that point with the belief that you're going to become a very good National Hockey Leaguer. There was a lot to like in his rookie season. He can shoot the puck. We saw that on his initial goal in Philadelphia, and pretty much every goal he scored was from some distance where he was snapping pucks. So I want to see him shoot more. I think he only had 115 shots on goal over the course of his rookie season. So there's certainly room for him to shoot the puck more. In terms of spitballing numbers that would make a successful season, obviously he hasn't reached his statistical prime yet. So I'm not saying that he should be a 30-goal guy here in year number 2, but if he got to 14 and took some baby steps to learn the league and transition to North America and everything else, I'd like to think somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 isn't out of the question. Now, I need to see what sort of opportunities he gets, because as we have said, and we talked yesterday about Nils Höglander, the team has improved, especially at the wing position. At least it thinks it has. And I'm expecting a much better season from Brock Besser with a clear mind. I think Connor Garland, certainly the expectation is that he better get to 20 goals in year number 2. I mean, he's been paid to score goals, and he didn't get to 20 last year. So there are other guys that are going to want opportunities and are going to be ahead of Podkolzin. I am curious to see how Bruce Boudreau uses him, but Bruce Boudreau had nothing but praise. I think he truly enjoyed getting to know Vasily Podkolzin, working with Vasily Podkolzin, and seeing the fruits of their labor, that this guy emerged down the stretch when there were injuries to Tanner Pearson and Bo Horvat, and Paterson was forced to play center, and they needed some guys to step up. Like, who thought that Alex Chason was going to step up late in the season? He did, but Podkolzin was another guy as well. So, I think for Vasily, it's just a question of taking all the things that he learned and did well last year, applying them here. He's now surrounded with a couple of countrymen. I think that should just help him in his growth and his development. And ultimately, I just want to see him continue to use his size, win his board battles, retrieve pucks. I'd like to see a little bit more playmaking from him, because that was one of the things in his draft year that we heard sort of the underrated playmaker and passer. And ultimately, we didn't see a ton of that. So I think that's an area of growth potential for Vasily Podkolzin. I'd like to see him flirt with 20 goals in his second season in the National Hockey League.
Depth at 4 can be spun 2 different ways, can't it? Because you could say, well, there's more competition to get into that top 6. But as long as Bruce Boudreau is going to deploy 3 centers, and until JT Miller's traded, we'll assume that, it also just means that there's maybe another good line. Like last year, because there was really off and on a third center, particularly at the end when Bo Horvat was injured. I mean, there was really only 2 lines where you could expect offense out of. If there's 3 lines you can expect offense out of, all the wingers should have pretty decent jobs to start. We talked about Hoaglander trying to get into that group, but he's not in it right now. The guys that will start the season on the wing, I think they're all going to have decent deployment, aren't they?
You'd think so. And if you're in a third line position, the other team only has 6 defensemen. Like, you'd think that you would see some third pairings, and maybe that would facilitate some opportunities. And you're right. If the Canucks go 1, 2, 3 down the middle, the way that we've talked about, you would think that Podkolzin's going to get a chance to play with one of those 3 centers somewhere, some way. You know, he started training camp last year on the wing with JT Miller and Connor Garland. He played a little bit with Miller at times throughout the season, but I think that was putting him in a position to succeed right from day one with one of the best forwards and with a newcomer that was coming in and trying to make some things happen as well. And so I do think that helped ease the transition for Vasily Podkolzin. Ultimately, and just to go back to where I started, where I said, the bar is a little bit low. Like, I just don't want people to dismiss what he might be ultimately. And I don't want people to think, 20 goals for this guy would be, an incredible season. I think there's more there. I think that put in the right spots as he continues to grow. But ultimately, I think what Vasily Podkolzin is going to become for the Vancouver Canucks is probably a top 6 winger. I have to think that he's going to be integrated into their penalty kill at some point. Maybe it happens this year down the road. But I think he's going to be a guy that, late game, the coach turns to protect the lead, to take pucks and just grind out shifts and wear down defensemen and those types of things where, he can play in all situations, he can be trusted, and it isn't ultimately going to be that he's going to be judged on the points that he puts up. I just think he sort of profiles as a guy who ultimately is going to top out as a really well-rounded, versatile forward that can help you in most situations.
Bodog, would anyone be surprised then if he starts on a third line with Bo Horvat as the centerman?
No. Maybe Mikheyev on his other wing. I mean, you never know. There's a bunch of different ways you can spin it.
Yeah. I do wonder whether they're going to use Mikheyev's speed alongside Paterson.
Maybe.
Just to balance out. But, hey, there's all sorts of, I think, good concoctions, combinations for Bruce Boudreau and the staff. And, frankly, Jeff, you talk about Boudreau enjoyed coaching the player. I think, in some regards, you're looking at a couple birds of a feather there across the linguistic barrier about the types of...
I think, too, and Podkolzin talked about it, and Bruce did as well. Like, look, Bruce has a track record. He worked with Alex Ovechkin, and I think that gets cachet with any Russian player that comes in, but it wasn't just Ovechkin. Obviously, Washington had a bunch of Russian players, and so I think, we know that Podkolzin at one point, one of the games against Washington, sought out Ovechkin afterwards and chatted him up, and, I just think that would have to instill confidence in the player that, hey, this coach has a history of working with my countrymen, they've had some degree of success, the path is sort of there. So, I mean, look, Bruce seems to enjoy coaching just about anybody. That's in his personality. But he did have nothing but high praise for Vasily Podkolzin, and Podkolzin responded down the stretch with the opportunities that he was provided.
Let's get to the Bodog poll question then. Which remaining free agent should most interest the Vancouver Canucks? Calvin DeHaan, Sonny, Milano, Tyler Motte, and Sam Steele are on our list, but feel free to go off the board or none of the above if you don't think there's anybody out there who can help them, Jeff.
No, we touched on it on Friday, I think, briefly, and again, I'm still not sure how this all comes to be. We talked mostly about Evan Rodriguez and a little bit about Calvin DeHaan. I guess like this team still needs help on defense, so I am gravitating towards DeHaan. I don't know at what price point, but the clock is certainly ticking as we flip the calendar to September. So I don't know that there's a lot of leverage for the players at this stage. And it sounds like the Canucks certainly have kicked tires on Calvin DeHaan. And they have in years gone by as well, different management regime, but this organization has been tied to that player on a couple of occasions. So a little bit of smoke there, and we'll see how it goes. There are a couple of guys that just don't make sense to me. Like Sonny Milano had a 14-goal season in Anaheim. That wasn't a one-off. He had a 14-goal season in Columbus a few years ago as well. Like, goal scoring is a commodity that is generally rewarded at the National Hockey League level. So I don't know enough about the person. Maybe there's some backstory there. I don't know how he fit in that Anaheim locker room. Whatever the case, a 26-year-old that's coming off 14 goals and 34 points in 66 games, it does surprise me that he's out of work. And I get that Anaheim didn't want to qualify him because the chance was that he could have bumped his, he was in line for a raise that Anaheim didn't seem to want to pay, but Anaheim's got oodles of cap space, so that's kind of curious as well. Whatever the case, I'm not making a pitch for Milano here in Vancouver. I'm just surprised. If he had one 14-goal season, maybe you say, hey, I need to see more. But this guy has scored 14 twice in the National Hockey League. I'm surprised that there isn't a team that doesn't feel he could help them. Which brings you to Tyler Motte as well. And we know the player, we know the person, good player, better person. 27 years of age. Like, he's never going to put up big numbers. That's not what he's about. But all we hear about in today's NHL is about speed. I mean, this guy's got speed for days. He's an ace penalty killer. He missed the first 15 games of last season. Like, you can point directly to Tyler Motte's absence from the lineup and the cratering penalty kill as one of the big reasons the Canucks season was sunk. He only played 10 games under Travis Green and then the coaching change. Like, I am starting to wonder if Tyler Motte has few options. For $1 million, would the Canucks take a long, hard look at Tyler Motte? Can you imagine a fourth line of Motte with Curtis Lazar and Nils Höglander? Blake, you were talking about a few minutes ago. Last season, 2 lines. Like, there were a lot of nights for the last, 5 years where we wondered about the fourth line and whether anybody on the fourth line truly was a National Hockey Leaguer. Like, you could roll out a fourth line, potentially, of Motte, Lazar, and Höglander, and all of a sudden, like, that's a pretty solid-looking fourth line. So, I put Motte in that. He's 27, coming off a decent playoff run with the Rangers. I just don't know why there hasn't been a bite. He's not asking for the moon, and certainly at this stage of the season, with a month to go before training camp, he can't, quite frankly. So I'm surprised that Tyler Motte, look, we saw Juho Lammikko. He's out of the NHL. Matthew Highmore had to take a two-way deal in St. Louis, but for a brief while under Bruce Boudreau, that was one of the best lines that Boudreau had, and Motte was the driving force. He's an NHLer. I don't know why Tyler Motte doesn't have a contract at this stage.
Heck, guys, at this time last year, we were talking about Motte and Höglander being third-liners for them. Middle six-type players for them.
I wonder if him going over in New York in the regular, from the trade deadline on, if that hurt his stock. He's in the center of the universe there, and he doesn't get a single point in the final 9 games as a Ranger. Does that degrade his ranking, do you think?
It hurts his leverage for a raise, but we're talking about a guy that's without a contract a month before training camp. Like, at a league minimum, at $1 million, like, how is there not a taker for a guy that has speed to burn and, as we said, a good player, and we know what he's done, open book with his battle with depression and the work that he's done off the ice. There's value in all of that, but even if it's just to help your special teams, Tyler Motte could come in and help the Canucks penalty kill. There's value in that. So he'll find work, but he may have to go the PTO route, which absolutely would shock me. But I just wonder if he won't be one of those, week before training camp signings somewhere in the National Hockey League.
Factor in the playoff games, he had 2 goals, no assists in 24 games with the Rangers. So the production just dried up for him. But
no, and he went for a 4th-round pick. Like, that's the value. I'm not trying to make him out. I think people in this market know, I'm not making him more than he is, but he can play. He can play in the National Hockey League. When you think of the dead money that exists in the National Hockey League and some of the guys that are stealing salaries, like Tyler Motte at $1 million, I think there would be some value there for some team in the league.
Adding further color, by the way, guys, to the Podkolzin-Boudreau dynamic you were just talking about, as we record this, Boudreau has shown up at 8 rinks, and apparently, according to Chris Faber's photography, Podkolzin scooted right over and they embraced. So, yes, there's something there between those two.
One of those Tyler Motte goals was an empty netter. The other one opened the scoring in a Rangers victory over Carolina in the Eastern Conference playoffs last year. All right. Well, the special summer programming is beyond us. You and Andrew are back together and recording this week, Jeff. Tell us what you got coming up on Rink Wide.
Yeah, we're going to record an episode on Thursday, I think, and hopefully it'll provide some long weekend listening for Canuck fans that are chomping and looking for any news. I think we'll look back essentially at the summer that was, and then we launch year number 2, season 2 of Rink Wide next week, and we'll come guns a-blazing and really start to dig down onto issues facing this hockey club, ahead of young stars and training camp and the preseason and all those types of things. So year 2 of Rink Wide just around the corner, but we'll come up with one final episode here to get you through the summer, into the long weekend, and set you up for the season ahead.
And some changes coming on Rink Wide that we'll tell you about. Okay, busy. Fill out your football pool, right? Don't forget that before next Thursday.
Yeah, I started this whole segment talking about low bars in this city. Yeah. I have set one for myself to be better than last year.
Poor Jeff finished last amongst us.
But I'm back with a vengeance.
Exactly. Only one way to go for JPat in the football
Redemption
pool.
Tour 2022.
Thanks for this, buddy.
Okay, guys, thanks.